All right. Hello and welcome everybody to the Next Level Quad Pod. We're back with our episode 2 of our deep dive into data. I'm Greg, and I'm joined, as always, by Rich, James, and Marilyn. What's up, everybody?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
We all having a good week so far?
All good. Yeah.
Yeah, almost done.
Almost done. It's a Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
The weekend's on the horizon. Anybody got good plans for the weekend? Anything fun? James, big swim meet all weekend?
Not me, my children. I'll be backup timer. I don't like to commit to full time.
Not even full time, the official timer?
I
Just
found the
backup.
hack. Like backup is good.
Yeah.
Like just in case they need me. Like you're still timing. Like when the gun goes off, you hit it, and then just in case someone else's stopwatch doesn't work, then they like call you over. So it's kind of nice.
Sounds
a
like
lot
a
of pressure.
I know.
It is. Oh, if you don't, I mean, the kids, if the touchpad, like, so they do touchpad, plunger, 2 timers at each, for each racer plus a backup timer. Because
Wow.
if a kid doesn't get their time and it's a good time, they're going to be crushed. So they do it right, I think. I don't know. I don't know what else to judge it against, but.
Mhm. Yeah. Crazy. All right. Anybody else? Fun stuff?
Nothing.
We do have something fun on the horizon. We're
Oh,
all
yeah,
getting
tomorrow.
sweat tested tomorrow. We have a consultant from Precision Fuel and Hydration. I don't think I said that very well. Precision Fuel and Hydration coming in to tell us how salty our sweat is. Has
Yeah.
everybody done their weight tests?
Yeah. I didn't
That's
put
a
him into
no, isn't
the.
it, Rich?
I didn't put
That's
him
a
into
no.
the tracker thing.
Okay.
They're
Yeah, me
written
neither.
down.
Yeah.
I'm not. Is it shared for everybody? Like, is everybody?
No.
else?
I think
No.
everybody has their own.
I think you were supposed to send it to her.
Were you
No, it's
embarrassed?
a shared Google
Oh,
Doc.
yeah?
No?
I did the
Oh.
questionnaire thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just didn't like when I do the numbers. I don't think of where is my file to go put that in, so I just write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't like on the questionnaire, though, it was like, what products have you tried? And it only you select one. I was like, oh, I've tried most of these
Yeah.
on here.
Yeah, I think I put whatever one I use most of the
Yeah.
time.
Mm.
So it'll be fun. Maybe we'll do a little recap of that and record like what our results were and stuff. And we can talk about some of the recommendations we got and stuff like that. I think there's some valuable stuff in there.
I'm really excited.
Maybe our listeners can guess who's the saltiest sweater, and then maybe we can give away whoever comments right. We'll pick at random a free gift to send them.
And who sweats the most, right? It's not just.
That's not up for debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, James.
I've ridden behind you, James, and
mist.
gotten a shower. It's disgusting.
No matter. Yeah.
Are you
just
sure it
never
was
be
sweat?
behind me
Yes.
in any leg of the race.
It's dangerous no matter where
I
you
thought it was raining.
So-
For the first, no joke, thought it was, like early in the morning, you get that little bit, or the dew falling off the leaves.
So at first Greg's like, oh, this is like so calming. I'm like,
No,
how
it
much
wasn't
better.
like calming.
I'm
I
so
was just-
connected to nature right now. And then he just sees me doing like this.
I think it might have been when you wrung out your bandana thing and it just was pouring out of it. Yeah, so I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah.
I'm excited to figure out how much to take in during races.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to be just in the middle of the bell curve. I kind of think based on the numbers from the scale and stuff and previous. I don't leave salty stains on my shirt
Mhm.
and stuff. I don't have a cramp problem.
Mm,
I think it's just
it's amazing.
average.
Rich, you
Elite.
cramped. You've
I
cramped,
do. I
right?
do. I don't know,
Marilyn, do
but
you-
I don't know
I
what the
cramped
salt
only
is.
that one time at AC. Bad.
Oh, wow.
And it's never happened again. But I did increase what I was drinking so
Mhm.
after that.
We're going to have our eyes opened tomorrow evening and hopefully find out what the deal is. So we'll definitely do a recap of that once we get that data. Other updates? What do we got?
Shout out to Yvonne. Finally signed up for Wilmington.
Mhm.
Do you think it was the Facebook post on Ironman's part that got her to do it? She's like, I want to be in that team picture.
Probably.
Well, I sent her the message that said you're not allowed to miss any more races, and I sent her the picture of the Facebook post.
She
Mm.
had already signed up though, hadn't she? I think.
Yeah, she had.
Yeah.
The listeners don't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
We'll edit that out.
All right. So that was kind of loud. Sorry, everybody. So the idea is we're going to pick up kind of where we left off with our dive into all the different analytics and data and stuff that we can collect out there. Last week is kind of a recap. We covered heart rate, functional threshold, how to compute your different zones for both heart rate and power, how you might incorporate lactate, or at least what lactate is and how it sort of delineates those zones. And that took pretty much the whole show. So this week we're going to get into some of the other things. We're going to talk a couple more metrics that you might want to track and sort of how to pull all those data tracking things together into one sort of coherent picture of where your fitness is at. And then we're going to get into some of the other stuff that you might not normally even think about recording, but it still is going to have a big effect, I think, on what you do for training. So I think to start, we talked about a lot of different data last week. And one of the things we didn't really talk about then was what to do with it once you've got it, right? Like we definitely spent time talking about how to record it and what the data meant in the moment, like how that kind of stuff. But we didn't really talk about what to do with it now that you've got it. So what kind of things do you guys do with that data when so you go for a bike ride, you go for a run, you hit stop on your watch or your bike computer, and then what happens to it and what do you do with it? So Rich?
I think that data is now computed by some device that you have, somewhat for some people, but it goes into, I use Garmin and Training Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that determines for me is the next few months of my, wherever I am and what type of training I am, whether it's base training or peak training, whatever it is. So that's kind of what I use that data for, and then test again for the next cycle of training.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's more valuable as real-time data. So if the workout is programmed and is telling you to hit a certain zone on the run, the great thing about having a Garmin watch, it'll just kind of beep its signal to you, letting you know if you're above or below. So you know you're hitting where you should be hitting, whatever the stimulus of the workout is, or on your bike computer, if you're doing a trainer ride and you've calculated your FTP and then everything is based off of that. And so you could see your power and making sure you're hitting those numbers too. I don't think I'm great at interpreting data and what it all means. I kind of leave that to you, like the professionals.
You are a professional now, James.
Or hope to be one day, yeah.
USAT says you're a professional.
But I think it's very useful in the moment to get the most out of that training session.
Marilyn?
Same as James. I think I look to see how I do at the workout, and I'll look at different things to see how my body's doing, if I'm tired, not tired.
Yeah.
Greg?
So I like to look at it afterwards because I guess I'm the data dork in the group. So we talked about, I think we all kind of use the same two main products, which is the Garmin ecosystem, because we're all using a Garmin wearable and all you're on a Wahoo bike computer, but James, but, and then we all put our data into Training Peaks. Training Peaks is an online platform that kind of compiles your data from everywhere. So it really doesn't matter where you're collecting it, what kind of device you're collecting it on, across multiple ecosystems, it'll pull it all in together. And then there's a lot of features within Training Peaks that let you look at your data afterwards for as long as you've got data for, right? So you can, often for me as a coach, and my own data, I like to look at like the last 90 days or so. That to me, like what have I been doing the last 3 months? And Training Peaks has a nice little button that says like, show me this for the last 90 days. And I can look at just about everything. Or you can go back 300, a whole year. You can go back 2 years. You can look at custom ranges and you can see pretty much everything you've done as long as you've been uploading some kind of data into their platform. And there's a lot of different things that you can get out of it. I think one of the best, but also one that you have to really be careful with, is something they have called the Performance Manager chart, PMC. I think it's chart.
Who's they?
Who's they?
Training
Peaks. Yeah. So the I don't know how much historical stuff we want to go into. Training Peaks started as a computer-based software you download on your computer. It was called like WKO, and you'd have it on your computer. You'd put your stuff in it, and it'd do all this. They're on WKO 5 now, but they merged with, Training Peaks was an offshoot. I don't know the business side of how things work, but now they went cloud-based and everything can pretty much be done online. That WKO software is now like super in-depth kind of stuff that very few people are going to take the time to want to learn. But so Training Peaks now allows you to upload all this data, and then it runs a bunch of analytics on it that allow you to follow stuff. The PMC was something that they started. I think the first iteration of it was probably in like 2005, 2006 when they first came out with this idea of trying to model what they called it fitness, but that's probably not the best word to use. So what they did was they tried to assign a score to every exercise you did. And this all originally started with power meters on the bike. And so that's where it's probably the most accurate. But they give you this, what's called a training stress score. And we've all seen those numbers,
TSS.
right? TSS. That's based, it's kind of a way to measure how hard a workout was. So it's based on 100-point kind of scale, 100-point being 1 hour at threshold. So if you have your FTP put in perfectly, you ride for an hour at that FTP, you'd earn or you'd get 100 training stress points. But there's a bunch of ways to skin a cat, right? So a 2-hour ride that's at an easier effort is going to bring you less, might still get you 100 TSS points. And so that was kind of the basis of the starting point of their model. And then they put a couple of different things into it. They looked at a 42-day rolling average. So it looks at the last 42 days. And I think they add some kind of like degenerative thing to it. So like the data from 42 days ago doesn't count as much as the data from yesterday.
Oh.
So it's like a weighted rolling average. And then so that's kind of, they called it your chronic training load or your CTL. And unfortunately, that one probably a lot of people fall into a trap with that, and they try and get it as high as they possibly can. And they end up either chasing TSS through harder and harder workouts that are beyond what they should be doing, or just trying to crank that CTL as high as they can, and they get into an overtrained state. It's really just a measure of what you've been doing for the last, month and a half or so. And then they have another one called the ATL, or the acute training load, which is the last 7 days of same kind of rolling average. And then they have something called the TSB, or the training stress balance, and it's how close those two are to one another. So let's say if you're doing, your CTL, your chronic training load is at 100, and your weekly training load is also at 100, then you're level, right? You're doing the same amount of work this past week as you've been doing for the last 6 weeks. So you're cruising. Like, that shouldn't be too hard for you. But if your chronic training load is 20, right, you've been doing minimal amount of work, but this past week you're at 100. Well, now this week has been 5 times harder than the last 6 weeks. So you're building that TSB number, or the training stress balance, is going to be way in the negative, and you're going to pretty much be hurting. So the idea is, the way this was originally designed was, can you use this year after year and learn something about yourself and find out that, like, hey, when I get to 85 and I rest for this amount of time, I have some of my best performances. When I go to 100, that's just beyond what I can control, what I can handle. And I see bad performances, and it lets you over time hone in on what works for you. Unfortunately, people look at it the wrong way and think that everybody should just be going for the highest CTL they can possibly get. And what that leads to is overtraining, because you start increasing the intensity of every ride or run or whatever, and you start just working out too hard. But it's a good way to map your training load over a long period of time. And that's kind of, for me, that's one of the most valuable things to look at. I kind of know, like, you learn where you do well, and you can try and get to those spots again.
So if you want your fitness score in Training Peaks, maybe this will help our listeners, to go up over time, what should you be thinking about in terms of the contributors that you need to manipulate?
Right. So training stress is calculated by intensity and time. That's it. Right. It's a measure of those two things. So the only way to get that number to go up is increase one or both of those things. So if you want to bring CTL, or your chronic training load, your fitness, up, you either have to increase the intensity of your workouts and keep the time the same, or increase the time, keep the intensity the same, or some combination of those two things. So the smarter way to do it is to increase volume, and not try and just keep ramping up intensity. So some kind of progressive plan that increases your volume over time will get you that. And that you can go online and read all about ramp rates and how steep those lines should be going up and stuff. That's beyond where we need to be. The idea, if you see too steep of a ramp, you're going to get hurt or sick or something like that. And that's another thing you can learn. Like, oh man, when I ramped at 10 TSS a week, I got sick every time that happened. And this software lets you kind of map that stuff out. So
the great thing about having a coach is if all that just went over your head, you can just train, record the data. That data gets sent to your coach, and the coach can monitor basically all these signals and see if the load is proper, if you're recovering, and then
right. Because I think on the free version of Training Peaks, you don't even see those numbers. Is that correct?
No,
I don't know. Even if you do see them, the performance chart has a lot. It's a lot to take in.
Right. You can also go in and take stuff out.
Yeah.
You know, so there's some things that are worth taking out and other things worth putting in. Anybody have anything that questions or anything? I did go kind of. That's my thing, unfortunately.
It's amazing, though.
I don't know about amazing.
It's a gift.
But you will not need to know this information as you kind of start and do your training right away. The way to get into it more is to accumulate the numbers for a little bit of time in Training Peaks and Garmin, and then say, okay, I've got this data. What does it represent to me? And that was the question I asked. What can I manipulate in order to improve my fitness? And that's what Greg was explaining to everybody to pay attention to. Training Peaks is one of the more popular ones out there. What are some other options?
So there's Today's Plan, which I have no experience with any of these because Training Peaks works. And I like Training Peaks, and I know how to use it.
Is their logo very similar, like TP also, and like same font?
That's a good. I don't know.
I've never heard of that.
And then Final Surge is the other one that's pretty common. Different coaches like to use different ones for different programming purposes and stuff like that. They're all basically doing the same thing. Training Peaks, though, I'm going to probably get this wrong, but I'm going to say the people behind Training Peaks invented the whole TSS, CTL, that metric of measuring load. Because I think going back to what Rich was saying, you don't need to be worried about all this stuff, but it is important to track some measure of what you're putting your body under, right? So the stress you're putting yourself under. That TSS does an okay job of doing that. It has its downsides, but it's probably one of the better ones out there because it used to be you just say, oh, I ran for 4 hours this week, or I rode my bike for 200 miles this week. What do you get at? What does that mean to anybody, right? Like your 200 miles and my 200 miles could be very different. You live in the Alps and I live, in Florida. Your time running could be very different from mine if I'm a new runner who's running 12-minute pace and you're a marathoner who's a stud who's running 6-minute miles. Like TSS accounts for those differences.
And it'll also, like, if you're looking at it, Training Peaks will also show you how many hours you spent training this week, which is interesting. So to kind of add on to what Greg is saying, that you can have a really long week, like you said, long time, right? And you'll be like, okay, well, next week I don't have that amount of time to train. I have less, but I still want to improve my fitness. So again, you're going to increase the load. So this will start to make sense as you get more into it. I also want to add for our listeners that thank goodness that we've come so far technologically that it's not like you have to start saving files and loading files. These systems, thank you to all these systems, they've kind of integrated with each other. Yeah. So they allow you, to load from one to the other fairly seamlessly. You don't have to do a lot of work.
I got a power meter for my bike in 2006, I think. And the hassle to get that data was like into something usable was a pain in the butt. Like I had to plug in the power meter head unit into my computer. I had to download the file. I had to then import that file into this WKO software. And I have to email a copy of it to the coach that I was working with, who had to do the same thing on his end. And then it just, now you hit stop on your watch. And before I take my phone out, I get the buzz, like your ride is ready to view. And it's just all there.
I remember having to connect the watch to the computer. And then
I got a really good earlier than the power meter, I got a really good polar heart rate monitor that I could download into the computer, but it was through infrared, and you had to like align the watch and the IR reader like sat on the watch but didn't connect to it, and it had to be perfect or else you'd like lose the download in between. It was unreal how hard that stuff is.
We've come so far.
It's amazing, right? So Training Peaks, in addition to doing that kind of stuff, also has a ton of other metrics within each file that I think are super useful. One that I really like, and I think is a great way to measure fitness gains that might be things you might not see because they're small, is something called cardiac drift. So I think, Marilyn, you have a couple of pieces on that, right?
I do. I don't get too much into the heart, how the heart functions and all that.
That's fine. I don't
yeah,
think we
I
need
don't think we need to. So basically, cardiac drift is just let's say on a run, after a certain amount of time, your heart rate starts to increase, even though you're maintaining the same effort level. It's generally believed that that's because your body starts to overheat or dehydration, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, let's say if you're going on an easy run, that you have to slow down your pace. It's just happens naturally, and it's just your body trying to cool itself.
Is there a way that we can control cardiac drift, or is it just something that's going to happen? So for example, when I start running, like I notice that my heart rate will go up, let's say it's around and about 10 beats per minute over time. And we're like, oh, okay, now it's going to keep going up. So is there anything to do to be able to, I don't know, temper it?
Staying hydrated is really the only thing I think that you can do.
Yeah, besides fitness gains.
Besides fitness gains, right.
Yeah.
I never realized that, because I do notice all my like long runs. It's like this steady
progressive
line that's just going up and up, especially as I'm getting hotter and hotter.
Right.
And hotter.
The most important thing to pay attention to is that your breathing rate and your effort level is staying the same. Then it's just cardiac drift. Mm-hmm. If you start to feel more out of breath and the effort feels harder, then it's not.
Is it a bad joke to say that as you get older, your cardiac drift goes negative and your heart rate's lower and lower and lower? No?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, no. I don't know. Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so.
It's fairly
I think it's, so here's where I find it very valuable. It shows you the way I think about cardiac drift is, can you handle the load that you put yourself under? Whether that's from a hydration or dehydration standpoint. Like if you become dehydrated, your blood gets thicker, your heart has to work harder, it's going to pump more. And you're going to see that in the file. But also just from like, if you go out and you do a regular steady state kind of aerobic effort, it can be easy. But if you go long, eventually your body's going to be like, I can't really do this
for much longer.
And you're going to see that increase in the heart rate. So Training Peaks does it where it looks at the first half of your ride or run and the average speed versus heart rate there, or power versus heart rate. It depends on whether, if we've got a power meter, it's going to look at power versus heart rate. If you've got, if you're running with just speed, it's going to do speed, pace versus heart rate. And it looks at the first half and the second half and compares them, and how much did it go up in the second half. So the more fit you get, the less it'll go up. So it's a really good way to measure, like, am I good with this effort level or with this load? Like if I can do, like, I don't know, pick a number, but like if I say, okay, this is my goal Ironman power on the bike, I need to do it for 5.5 hours or 6 hours or 6.5, whatever it is. Like if I don't see too much cardiac drift at that power after 3 or 4 hours, then I probably have the endurance to do that effort. Like I'm good with my endurance base might be built up enough. And now I can look at raising the actual power that I can hold, and like little things like that. You're going to have to find out what those numbers are. But like when you're unfit, if you were to take somebody who completely right off the couch, you'd say, okay, you're going to go run a mile for me. And their heart rate would just go like it'd be a ski slope going straight up, and their speed wouldn't get any faster. Their speed would probably go down, and you'd see those two lines diverge from one another. Heart rate would go up, pace would go down, and they're not ready to do that kind of effort. The fitter you get, the closer those lines come to one another in as far as fitting.
But if it's really hot, you would still, even if you're fit, you might still have some Because you have blood going to your skin.
Yeah,
to
I think
cool you
right.
off.
Hot
It'll
heat,
still
heat
heat
is
will still cause
definitely
it
one
no
of
matter
those
what.
things. So if you see that and you're
Right.
like, well, I'm fit enough.
My effort is the same.
Right, my effort felt the same. What's the reason for it? And it could be those kind of things. But also, like, if you become heat adapted, you're going to see. You know,
Right.
so
Also, so it lowers, right?
yeah. So I think it's a good way to say, did I handle this effort or this load properly?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think is a super good. Super good. That sounds great.
That's-
I think it's a super
It's very
cool,
good.
groovy metric to look at.
I learned so much from these shows.
Yeah, right.
That's good.
It's a good thing. Another one you can look at, I think I look at this one more for running, is efficiency factor.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we got on that one?
So this one, efficiency factor is basically the ratio between normalized power or pace and your heart rate. What is normalized power, you might ask? So normalized power is, so you normally would look at average power. Normalized power takes into account the intensity and, let's say, the elevation of a ride. So you can go on 2 rides. One is flat, easy pace, and you can have, let's say, an average power of 200. You can do another ride that maybe is hilly, and you still would have 200 average power because you're going hard up the hill and then very easy on the on the flats.
Same normalized?
No, same average, but the normalized power will be different.
Okay, good.
Because the normalized
Gotcha.
power will take into consideration the physiological cost of the hillier ride.
Yeah.
So normalized power for the hilly ride will be higher
Mm-hmm.
than the regular flat easy ride.
So is the normalized power then effectively what your body felt?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a
and
good
we
way,
should go
really
by,
good way of putting it.
Mhm.
So understand like how much strain you want under is that's a better number.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Go ahead.
Theoretically, the idea is if you went on a hilly ride that had a normalized power, had you gone on a perfectly flat, even ride, that's the power that you
would-
could have held
right.
for that same time.
Mhm.
So it kind of de-weights the zeros and overweights the things above threshold. And I don't know how the math is there, but it's beyond what anybody needs to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I don't think it's just, it's done automatically.
Yeah.
That's
They
all you
tell me
need to
what
know.
it is. Yep.
We use it. We don't have to understand
Right.
how it's
Yeah.
calculated.
It's given for you. So.
Yes.
So when you're figuring out efficiency factor, so we'll take that normalized power and it gets divided by your heart rate and you come out with a number of the efficiency factor. And the way you use it is, so you would, let's say, do the same run every X amount of weeks and you would look at that efficiency factor. You want it essentially to go higher, and that means you're becoming more aerobically fit.
Now, how is that normalized power calculated on a run? Is it taking it into account?
Normalized pace, it would be.
Normalized pace. I was
For
thinking
a run, it would be normalized
so then
pace.
look your
for,
pace over hills
Mhm.
versus
Correct.
Oh,
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't know what people can see on the free version of, because I look at most of the stuff through the
but
coaching
Garmin,
version.
doesn't Garmin have normalized power?
I was going to ask,
I-
where do you guys look at efficiency factor?
So I see it on Training Peaks.
Yeah.
But so Training Peaks will also
Garmin has it
calculate.
too.
They call it normalized graded pace.
Yeah.
And that's what they're. If you go and do a super hilly run, it's going to take into account. Yeah, you're going to go slower uphill.
Mhm.
It kind of grades it out. It says like, what would this run have been if you were on perfectly flat ground?
Mm-hmm.
And it uses that. You could also have a running power meter, and it'll do the same thing.
Oh. So how much is the next version of Training Peaks from the free?
I have it for some reason. I don't know what I pay for it.
It's $100.
$130 a year.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so
Year.
$10 a month.
I could probably figure it out if I.
I think that's about what it is.
Okay.
If you are self-coached, it is, I think, very valuable
Yeah,
for
there's
you
so
to
much
use.
stuff to look at.
If you are coached by somebody, then it's probably not necessary.
If Training Peaks is listening to our podcast and wants to, offer discount codes to the Next Level Try, reach out to us.
We're listening. Yes, we're here.
Like and subscribe to our podcast and reach out, comment.
So yeah, that efficiency factor is a good one. Again,
Mhm.
we talked about this last week where, too many people hone in on one metric like FTP and everything is based off of that, where if you start to look at some of the more broad metrics, there's a lot to be learned there. You might be improving in something like your efficiency factor, and maybe your functional threshold isn't going up. but you're becoming more efficient, which means you can do more work for less cost. And that's a win, especially in long course triathlon. You know,
and that's an easy one to check.
Yes. Yeah, you can see it, you know, if you, especially like running and stuff, you do the same loops all the time. Like you're going to have, you know, pretty easy ways to compare those kind of things and see like, oh, I got a little bit better. You know, and efficiency is one in running is one of the only things that will continue to improve almost forever. Like you will, if you run consistently, you will become more efficient at running. You gain like things like your high end sprint, those you can train really quickly and you top out. And then VO2 max, you can train and it gets better, but it tops out. And threshold tops out eventually. Efficiency doesn't seem to top out. You just get more and more and more efficient. And that's why people get faster and faster at running 10, 12, 13 years into their careers, just because they're becoming more efficient. They're able to do more with less.
Is efficiency factor even more valuable in swimming? You become more and more efficient the more and more you swim.
Yeah, I think so.
Is it measured?
I don't know of any, like, swimming's tough to measure all those kind of things. Like we just got heart rate for swimming. Like heart rate for swimming is tough to get. There are no commercial swimming power meters that I know of.
There's this new like data collecting thing that Phoenix, my kids' swim team, is using. It's called Tritonwear.
Oh yeah, it goes on the back of their cap,
goes on the
right?
back of the cap, and it does some sort of like it measures a whole bunch of things. I don't know. I haven't looked into it too deeply, and I should have checked that. But that might be the closest thing. Like they were showing the dashboard that the coaches use, and everything they can get off.
They can get tons of stuff. I remember seeing that like maybe like just before COVID, I had seen and like got really interested in looking into it, and then I forgot about it, and just we couldn't find the budget for our high school swim team because they're decently expensive.
Yeah.
But all kinds of metrics. I don't think that they're able to do like, so for efficiency, you need to have some kind of load and your body's response to that load. That's kind of what you're measuring with efficiency, right?
An input.
But you don't need to normalize. It's the same damn pool.
Yes.
Same damn distance.
You don't have to normalize it, but I don't know how you...
Is there a way, like, if you knew the swimmer's height and how many strokes, and like, would a more efficient stroke always be like less? No.
Mm-mm.
What about just the simplicity of like, aren't you more efficient if you're using less strokes to get through the same 25 meters?
Well, I mean,
the
so Garmin does have that.
It.
I don't know if you've ever seen the SWOLF
Yeah.
score on your watch.
I don't know what it means.
Yeah. So what they do is they take number of strokes plus the time it takes to do a length of the pool and adds them together. The idea being, like you said, the fewer strokes in the same amount of time. I just don't know that
efficient you are.
I don't know if that makes you more efficient, because then you're pulling more with each stroke, and I don't know that that's actually a more efficient. Like when
you're displacing more water underneath you.
Okay, but let's play it from a running or a cycling standpoint. Like we all hear about, why do we take 180 steps per minute when we're running as opposed to 140? Like
because I thought that was less load on your body.
Right, a bunch of small steps was less load than a fewer big steps. So why would it be any different in the pool? Taking fewer big
it's not
pulls,
weight bearing,
but you're putting force into the movement. I don't know the answer. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate with you.
Yeah, that's why we have this podcast,
right?
To discuss things.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I think everybody kind of settles into their stroke pattern.
Please comment, and we can come back.
If anybody's got some ideas, it's one of those, like, if I see it and it looks wrong, I can like pick up on it. Like I have this one kid that is one of the fastest kids on our team, and he's just not swimming with enough of a stroke rate. Like he's muscling through the water. Now it's fast enough for him, but I think he'd be faster if he just increased his turnover a little bit, let a little bit of water go, and increased from, he might only take 13 or 14 strokes to get across the pool. If he went to like 15, I think he'd be faster. I don't know if he'd be more, but I don't know that he'd be more efficient, right? And that because he's not trying to swim 1,500 meters or, an Ironman swim at 2.4 miles. He's trying to swim 100 backstroke fast, or he's trying to swim a 200 freestyle fast. Those are very different animals.
I wonder if you can measure the amount of water you displace, right? Somehow.
Yeah, but also I don't know how you measure drag, and that's the big question mark.
So many good things.
He's going into his analyzing.
Yeah, he's risk analyzing this one. Drag is the big one, and that's why you need some kind of on-body power meter to measure it. And I don't know that it even exists. That Triton wear I think is close, but I still don't think it's a power meter. So, yep, swimming's a tough one, a tough nut to crack when it comes to that.
In so many ways.
Yeah.
You said, and swimming training has been kind of stuck in the dark ages, right? Just brute force almost,
or just throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and
It's
see what
volume.
sticks. It's but it's volume and intensity, and it's like who can keep up
and
with
natural selection.
Yeah, it's more natural selection than anything. It may be a lot better now, but
Well, that's what I'm hearing, that it went less towards the like, let's just do volume to target specific things. Like you said, the stroke rate can improve. So
yeah,
instead of just making him do more laps, making him work a stroke rate for a specific period of time.
right. And I think because you don't have the ability to track those metrics in swimming as easily, it's easy to, the only one you really have is distance and pace, like, yeah, you could do heart rate, but I don't think too many, like your kids aren't doing anything with heart rate, right? Like
that's the thing. I guess like the just data capture is not available.
Yeah.
So maybe Triton wear would be the first thing to kind of
and it's
usher in this.
Yeah, and it's different. Like when I look at my watch does an okay job of swim heart rate. Like it's not great. There's a lot of gaps in the data and stuff like that. And it just is very different because you're buoyed up by the water, because you're horizontal. Like there's a lot of reasons why your heart rate's going to be different than it is on the bike and swim. So it's like, I don't know if you can even compare the two,
And heart rate's like, how much does it, I know it matters, but I'm saying like if you're swimming 100 or 50,
right?
Like,
yeah, then it doesn't
cool.
matter, but we're not,
Right,
we're trying
not.
to swim.
Right. So it's for the longer
distances.
distances ones,
So
the 1500
it's one of
meters
those,
and up.
like, I think your heart rate zones would be totally different for swimming versus like swim or bike and run. They're within a couple of beats of each other. I don't think for swimming they are. I think they're totally different. So
is there an equivalent of zone 2 training for swimming?
yeah, it's tough to talk,
Yeah.
right? It's tough to do the talk test underwater.
But like, do you have to?
So I mean, like if you watch any of the YouTube videos of the Norwegians or Lionel Sanders, they're doing lactate in the water. They're coming up. The coach is taking it, because that would help you. Because I think a lot of people probably swim too hard, and that's because swimming's like when you're learning to swim, it doesn't matter how fast you're going. It's an all-out effort, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just like, I'm going to survive to the other side of this pool, and then you get there and you're gasping, right? It doesn't matter how fast you're going. You're like, you're anaerobic.
It's hard to like figure out your pace in the water. You're not looking at anything. You're just, it's hard.
All feel.
Of course,
Yeah, it's
I'm the
all
anomaly.
feel.
I feel like I'm on zone 2, and I have to,
in the water, really?
Yeah. And if I like,
you're kind of lucky.
and I don't feel comfortable, right?
He's
like,
Aquaman.
like when I'm like open water swimming, I love that. I love it more than pool swimming. I just go and I'm at like you said, just this like, we'll call it zone 2. But then I get in the pool and then someone will be like, oh, you got to go like 50 all out effort. I'm like, oh, this is awful. And so much more different for me to do that.
Yeah. Swimming is a tough one. And it's tough to like, so that's where like going back to those metrics, those metrics that Training Peaks calculates. Like, I don't know that you get a really good picture by trying to combine all 3 sports into one thing and say like is 100 TSS on the bike the same as 100 TSS on the run, is the same as 100 TSS in the pool? Training Peaks says they are. But my experience, doesn't say they are. So
there is a lot to be said for training based on personal effort. Right? Like,
we talked about it last week, but you need to be able to dial that effort into the correct, like you still have physiology going on. Like you need to know what easy feels like. You need to know what hard or tempo or whatever feels like. So that you can dial in that effort, anything else that you guys can think about for like the almost like post exercise analysis side of things? Anything that pops in your head is something important worth talking about?
I mean, I just like to look at, I guess like the flashy numbers. I like to see max speed.
Mm-hmm.
I like to look at how much elevation.
Yeah.
I like to see what my max heart rate was. Just kind of the fun numbers.
Yeah, I think it's worth looking at all those
Mhm.
things and kind of getting an idea of where you're at. Anything else? All right, so let's jump into some of the things maybe that we'd measure that aren't considered part of your workout. Like, so they're not, I guess they're not training metrics, right? They're more like lifestyle metrics, right?
And I think they're super important and becoming more important now than they were
Mhm.
ever before. And I think they're great.
So we got a couple of things on the list. Maybe we'll start with, you want to start with sleep data, James?
Yeah.
And maybe go into that?
So, do you guys all track your sleep?
I
You
only
guys- were you-
started because Garmin
Yeah.
started tracking my sleep.
Yeah.
So.
I
Sleep is
used to-
important.
I used to track it too. I think Fitbit. I used to wear a Fitbit before this,
Mhm.
and it would track sleep. So I mean, obviously, no one's anti-sleep, right? We're all
No.
fans of
Very
sleep.
pro sleep.
Yes.
Yep.
So we do all this training, and you're building up all this fatigue. We talked about the chronic, whatever training load, CTL,
Weren't you
ABL,
listening to me at all?
PCD.
Oh,
So the only way, and
So
then
what do
so
I
your
do
body
this
is like
for?
basically damaged, and
Yeah.
then you have to recover. And
Right.
that from that recovery, you hope to get into that super compensation, and you're literally peaking, hopefully
Mm-hmm.
for your race. So the only way to recover, eat and sleep,
Mhm.
right? Or
So are
steroids.
you always damaging your body when you're training? Is that what
I
you're
mean,
saying?
A little bit. I mean, you die a little bit every day. So
That's how I felt at the edge of the pool today.
yeah. I mean, when you're training your muscles, your little tears in your muscles, and then it needs to rebuild, and that's how you build muscle.
Yeah.
I guess the same thing happens to your fitness. You got to.
and I mean, like
Stress it.
hormone release, right? At night
Mhm.
is,
Yeah.
you
So
know,
that was the key thing with sleep. You have different stages. There's deep sleep, REM sleep, and then like light sleep. And there's 3 cycles you go through. Is about an hour and a half, they say, for that one cycle on average. So the important thing for athletes is that, number one, length of time of sleep. They say and I think it's across the board, but they say especially endurance athletes, you want to really get 8 hours of sleep.
Mhm.
Realistically, does everyone get 8 hours of sleep?
I get it a lot.
good for you, Marilyn. I'm going to share my numbers. Last night I got 7 hours and 44 minutes,
Okay.
according to my watch.
Last night I didn't, but,
But
usually
I got a 97-point sleep score
that's
last night,
nice.
which is, I've seen higher than that only a few times. Now, I don't know if that means anything, but it
He was
tells.
prepping for
It
this
does.
podcast.
It does.
Did you
It's
have a hard day or hard week, like training wise beforehand? And
No, yesterday I took a day off. I didn't train in the morning. And it was a pretty relaxed, like a normal day for me. Yeah, I don't think it was.
how about you?
Mine varies. Sometimes I'll have like very little sleep and then I'll have like a night, which is really good. I'm inconsistent. That's I think where I'm at.
I
So-
average about 8 hours.
Is there such a
I'm
thing as
probably
catching
around
up?
8.
There is no such thing as catching up.
No.
No.
So you can't do like 2 hours tonight and then be like, all right, I'm going to sleep 18 hours the next day. It's not going to work. You just have to write it off as a loss.
Can
But
I nap?
Mm-hmm.
nap, but the problem is, again, so that those 3 cycles, a nap, let's say a 20-minute nap, you're not going to really hit the cycles. And the importance of the cycles is that in that deep sleep phase, you're going to release the most HGH.
Yep.
And that's going to get your repair, right? In REM sleep, that's when your body releases testosterone. So you want to spend as much time in those 2 zones as possible, so that that's what's like helping you repair and get the benefits from, or recover from all your training, so that you can super compensate. The problem is, most people, I think, from what I read, you hit those cycles at like consistent times. Your body likes consistency, and so if you're sleeping erratically, different times of the night every night, your body can't like adjust to that. So for me, I know most of my deep sleep always happens before midnight.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, I'm like in bed sleeping at 9 o'clock every night. I usually get up at
Not
4:35. Yeah, not going to happen today. I should be sleeping.
Not on Thursdays.
Not on podcast.
He's
But-
actually sleeping right now.
Thursdays.
But if I look at my Garmin data, all my deep sleep happens early in the
Mhm.
night. And if I go to bed after midnight, I pretty much get no deep sleep. So I lose out on that whole HGH window.
So what's the benefit of napping?
The benefit of napping is just, I think, for you to feel refreshed. So if you're just taking like a 20-minute nap, you don't want to go into a deep sleep cycle, or you're going to get super groggy waking up. Like you get that sleep inertia, I think they call it. So I'm not a good 20-minute napper. If I nap, I need like 2 hours.
Right.
I think I need to go through that full cycle to feel refreshed. And I think there is benefit to that, but you really need that long continuous sleep to get all the benefits.
Yeah. In a perfect world, I think you'd get both. You'd get some long sleep. I don't think you can use naps to make up for loss of sleep during the night. I think you use naps to help, like you said, refresh yourself more than anything else.
And then also the problem, though, what I was always kind of frustrated with when you have the sleep data, it's like, how do you actually increase it? Like deep sleep is good for you. How do you increase it? And it looks like that's actually just kind of genetic. Like it's just everyone has their own sort of amount of deep sleep they get. So like there's
do you all have your watch data? Well, how much deep sleep did you get last night?
Let's see.
I typically go just over an hour to an hour and 15.
Okay. So I had, like I said, a phenomenal night's sleep last night. I got an hour and 54 minutes of deep sleep.
I got an hour and 7, and I'm usually around like an hour and change. Not that much.
How
deep sleep?
Yeah, I'm usually like an hour and a half. I've never seen anything. It's like an hour to an hour and a half. Ooh,
okay.
Wait a minute. Wait, but I slept 10 hours this one day. So I just got 2 hours.
10 hours.
Wait, what day was this? Saturday. Wait, is that right? Maybe.
How about this? Look at your numbers. How close are your deep and REM numbers? Because I find the better scores I get, and this might just be part of the algorithm and how they calculate it, the closer those numbers are, the better my sleep score is. So like I got an hour 54 of deep and an hour 49 of REM. And I wonder if that's, even though like 7.5 hours, 7:45 is a good night's sleep, it's probably my average. But I think the fact that I got a lot of deep and REM and they were in pretty well balanced, I think led to that 97 that I'm going to hang on my refrigerator.
I got 87, but I had an hour and 7 of deep and an hour 28 of REM.
I'm going to ask a different question, but I'll say my numbers. They're pretty close, and I'm looking at a 7-day average, just so that we can get some
I
of
don't
this.
have my phone here. So.
And I'm about 50 minutes of average deep over the last 7 days, and 55 minutes of average REM. Do you guys, and you don't have to tell me if you do, have an average awake time?
Yeah.
I mean, I was awake 4 minutes last night.
12 minutes.
But
I find that disturbing. I'm averaging 41 minutes.
Oh, that's a lot.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's you're constantly thinking and analyzing things.
Analyzing
it wakes
risk.
me up to think about stuff, and then I go back to sleep. My brain's waking up.
What have you guys found either helps your sleep or hurts your sleep?
So what hurts my sleep, my wife's going to hate me. She gets up a lot in the middle of the night to, get a drink, go to the bathroom, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, we have, one of my children still young, so we leave the hallway light on. So every time the door opens, I wake up from the light. Because I've noticed the nights that I sleep through the whole night, even if she does get up, is because that hallway light is off.
Okay.
And so I think I'm very sensitive to
light sensitivity.
To light, So that hurts sleep. Podcasting night when we indulge in a little too many drinks.
Yeah, definitely not.
Not a restful sleep at all.
Yeah, drinking is a pretty clear cut. Harmful. It doesn't help sleep at all. Yeah.
Big meals, they say, before going to sleep, not a good idea.
I'm a light sleeper. Like every little thing wakes me up. So.
What I like to do now too, I have like an air filter in my room. I like to just have that on as white noise.
Oh, I have white noise on my phone playing all night.
I've started using a weighted blanket, and I feel that helps.
Just have someone hugging you.
No. I'm not a cuddler.
You guys didn't cuddle during Muscleman? No?
And I'll be honest, you want to know a funny she's going to kill me.
Does she listen to the podcast?
She does. I guilted her into it, I think. As soon as we got separate blankets, on our bed we have 2 blankets and we each have one. We don't share a blanket. My sleep got infinitely better. So did hers.
We got
you weighted blankets. I've never tried one.
So she doesn't have a weight. She got a weighted blanket thinking it would be good for her. She didn't like it, so I took it and I was like, oh, it's good. But just separate blankets. Huge game changer.
Sharing moments for our listeners. So we have separate mattresses, and I think that's beneficial. And the reason that happened was very simple.
Is it
When we
like Dennis the Menace? Like you guys are separated by a nightstand?
No.
Oh, just the
no,
mattress.
That's
the mattress.
Bert and Ernie, no?
So when you get a king,
elevated ones.
no, when you get a king bed,
Yeah.
right? The mattress couldn't make it up the
Right.
stairs.
Oh, yeah.
So in order to
They
get
cut
the
it.
same mattress, it's
With
the
a
king bed is two
chainsaw.
twin
Yeah.
extra longs.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
they're
really?
like, but we can get the two twin extra longs up to the
Uh-huh.
bedroom. So we're like, well, we can't fit a king. And when we did that, we're like, well, this is great. I don't feel the
Yeah,
other
you don't
person
feel the
moving.
other person moving.
And that was like, but for me also, I wanted to add that it's also temperature. If I'm
Okay.
overheated, I don't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So 68 supposedly scientifically is the ideal sleeping temperature.
I'll tell you, there's so much out there now on like this idea of sleep hygiene and like all the stuff you can do to get better sleep. And that's one, like stay cool. They make like, have you seen these air conditioners for your, like, it'll blow cold air under your pillow, under your blanket or something crazy
that
like
looks-
that? It's,
Oh,
It looks
really?
insane.
Like
Sounds
awesome.
weird.
It sounds very
It's a little
weird.
fan,
But it's fan. And like the idea, I mean, how many of you sleep with a foot sticking out of
all the
your
time.
blanket, right?
I can't. It's
Like
like,
the thermo-
I just overheat if my feet are covered.
Yeah, that's
Well,
the
since we're getting all
thermoregulated.
kinds of information, like I always sleep in the same position and pretty much most of the night. I know different people, like even my kids, they'll sleep in like in all kinds of different.
Kids move more than
amazed
kids
at
move
what
so
I go in
much.
and check on my kids at night, and like, man, they're like contorted in
Yeah.
these yoga positions. I'm like, how
Mhm.
do you not wake up and just?
Yeah.
I'm in like whatever, like I know the specific side that I like. I actually like specific thing. Just sleep like that the whole
Why
night.
is that
you know?
not surprising?
No, that's.
I have a routine.
Yeah.
I start on my right,
Oh,
and then like I'll kind of go into my. So when I first hit the pillow, I'm out. I'm
Oh, yeah?
immediately sleeping,
Huh.
and I'm already like dreaming. So
Mhm.
but then I wake up like 10 minutes later. It's like it's jarring, and then I move to like on my back, and then I'm like, all right, when I really want to go to sleep, then I move to my left. And even though like left is where I sleep, I always still want to start on my right. I
Yeah.
don't know what.
Oh,
It's just like my
same.
routine.
same thing. Well,
So
I don't
we could be
wake up. I
synchro-
don't fall asleep and wake up, but I usually like lay down on my right side, and then I'll actually fall asleep on my left side.
Well,
Just like-
you just said that you have your spot and you know it and you do it.
Well, I always sleep through the night without changing. Like I'll wake up as I
Oh.
fell asleep on my left
okay.
side.
Mhm.
I don't go into like starfish and then back into one position. And
Oh, I didn't know there was like
position.
names. Okay.
Yeah, I just sleep on my left side the whole.
I want to know how many of our listeners have
This
just
is
fallen
amazing.
asleep.
I know.
We can edit this out.
No, this is good.
So
But I think the take-home message is pay attention to your sleep. Like
Yeah.
it's probably the most important thing you can do to, deal with your training load. Right?
Yeah.
You can't survive without sleep. It's
no, you will
it's
literally
water, sleep, then food. Like I think that's the hierarchy of needs. Like I think you can go a lot longer without food than you can without sleep.
I took away
Debatable.
consistency. That's what I'm taking away.
I mean, you're
That's
doing some
debatable.
kind of training. What's that?
He said you could take away. You could live longer without food. I don't know.
I mean, like actually live
Okay.
longer.
Yeah,
Like I
you-
think
you
you
could.
die from lack of sleep before
Yeah.
you die from lack of food.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
But-
we can like eat away at our own bodies for
Mm.
quite some
sleep,
time.
sleep. You can't go too long without
No.
sleep.
You get delirious. Does anyone use any sleep aids?
No.
I do.
What is it?
So it depends. Melatonin has
Mhm.
helped me a lot with kind of getting back on a schedule. If going back and forth between the school year and summertime, like my sleep schedule gets screwed up for a while, and melatonin will help get it back on track. Cannabis has been a big help. THC, I think, helps put me to sleep. Really well. Full disclosure, my 97 was with 5 milligrams of THC about an hour before bedtime.
And we are in a state where it's
Did I ask
legal.
you already?
It-
How do you
it
wake
is
up
legal.
though? Do you
Fine.
like? Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't take enough, it's out of your system.
Yeah.
Within 7 hours. Yeah, I'm not having any kind of issues with it long term. So
Melatonin, I thought, was helpful in helping you stay asleep longer rather than fall asleep, right?
I think
No, it helps you fall asleep.
Helps you fall asleep, so it's
Mhm.
the other way.
I get
Yeah.
a weird feeling though when I take melatonin.
yeah, and I
almost
don't take it a
It
lot.
doesn't work for everybody.
Right,
either.
I take it like to get back on a schedule.
Yeah.
I'm not taking it every night.
I get a little like almost opposite. I get like restless feeling when I
Okay.
take it, and so I just get in this weird.
I've had that
Mhm.
before, but
Quasi-state.
not with weird. Like I remember getting that like with like Tylenol PM or one of those like you're
Mhm.
sick and you take one of those things. I've had that feeling with those
Mhm.
things before. I've never noticed it with melatonin. I'm also not taking like huge doses of it.
And I've also
couple
worried
of-
that, like they say, if you take melatonin externally, then your body's
Mhm.
going to create
Right.
less of it.
Yeah, and that's
then
why
you-
I'm saying like once in a while, if I need to get back on a schedule, that has been the best way.
Have you guys ever heard of ZMA?
No,
I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
So I take ZMA daily. It's just a supplement. It's zinc, magnesium, and I think vitamin B12.
Oh, what's the other one?
Magnesium
Or
helps with sleep.
Magnesium is the sleep one, right?
And then
Yeah.
the zinc I figure is just good for your immune system. And magnesium I figure just for maybe cramping, but I take it every day. It hasn't really helped, but I don't know how
It
much.
helps
Maybe that's
with
not.
No, I
sleep.
think
It does-
magnesium
helps with sleep. Yeah.
But it doesn't help you fall asleep, but it's supposed to help you have deeper sleep. And a weird side effect too is you have sometimes like really intense dreams, just like crazy, very vivid dreams while you're on it.
You want to share any of them? We can get deep into that. No, please don't.
I'll make a journal.
Weren't we
for-
supposed to analyze someone's dream?
No.
No,
we
we
weren't.
didn't want to make it official how crazy we are. But yeah, it helps. It's inexpensive.
Yeah.
I just look at to make sure it has the highest amounts of each supplement.
Okay.
But yeah, for me, it's been a really good help to try to get as much like deep and stay asleep.
Yeah.
And yeah, figure the zinc helps with your immune system.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So anything else for sleep?
I'm sure we can get into a lot of stuff like what you do, but when you wake up and like
Yeah.
But
And
that's good.
I think that the sleep data is important. I think like you should just pay more attention to how much sleep you're getting,
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
starting to dive down the rabbit holes of like how much REM. I mean, you just heard like we all have very different
Mhm.
amounts. I think just total sleep is the important one. I also don't know if the watches and stuff are
Right, how
really
accurate.
good enough
Yeah.
yet to be telling the differences in the stages of sleep. So
Oh, my last night's sleep was garbage. It said
Yeah.
I got 10 hours. I did not get 10 hours
Right.
of sleep.
you
I
know,
think you just want to dial in length of time and consistency.
Yeah.
Those are the main things.
so.
And your body will tell you too. I mean, Tuesday, I was so tired at night and I fell asleep at 8:30
Mm-hmm.
and just crashed.
Right.
Just-
Yeah, listen to your body. All right, next one. Sometimes you can't listen to your body. This is weight.
Wait. Yes. So,
I'm going to take a step away from the mic for this one.
so the interesting thing about weight, there's no, I guess there's this whole thing about race weight. Like, what is
Mhm.
your ideal race weight? Do you guys try to hit a certain weight during race
I
season?
don't.
Do you track it?
I don't.
I
I don't
think
even
there's
weigh myself.
probably an ideal
You
race
don't weigh
weight,
yourself?
Mm-mm.
which is your like how much power you can sustain over the effort that you want to sustain over that period of time
Mm-hmm.
that you need to do. I don't have that dialed in.
And so what's interesting too is like, so they looked at they did a study, looked at a bunch of different athletes, swimmers, cyclists, triathletes, just runners, endurance, and then they kind of like grouped them all together and saw how weight affected each type of athletes. And so swimmers were on the kind of like the highest scale of weight amongst all these athletes. They had the most mass, and it makes sense. They're usually like sprinters, or they're not doing these really, really long efforts like a triathlete. But weight really affected them because if they were too light, they just didn't have that like I guess power in the water, the buoyancy. Like if you get too skinny, you kind of lose a little bit of buoyancy. So that you really needed weight. And then on the flip side, runners, the lighter you were as a runner, the better of a runner you were because it's less mass that you're moving. It's easier on the joints. You can move faster with less effort. I guess your efficiency goes up. And then cyclists were like right in the middle. Like you needed that balance. Like you couldn't be too light because then you couldn't make the power, but you didn't want to be too heavy because you have to move that power. So even these studies, they couldn't say like what is the ideal race weight. There's no definitive answer, but they did look at data and say who were these elite, like the elite athletes in these groups, what did their numbers look like? And so the numbers I found they were looking at Ironman triathletes, and they had these ratios. So for the top performing Ironman athletes in men, the ratio was something like, what did I write here? 2.1 to 2.3 pounds per inch. So however tall you are, however many inches, multiply that 2.1 or 2.3. This is for men. Calculate out what that weight is. For women, it was 1.8 pounds per inch. So again, the unfairness to women, like we talked about last week.
Oof.
So
way over the ideal weight.
yeah,
Race weight.
mine said it would like on the low end would be like 151 to 165, and that's about almost 30 pounds less 20 to 30 pounds less than what I weigh right now.
It depends though, but it's like if I weighed that, I feel like I would have no strength.
I feel like, and I don't know if this is true or not, but a lot of the data recently is not the pure weight, but BMI. But
I don't even like BMI though, because my BMI was always high.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you got to go on how you feel. I don't know.
So here's the thing, right? If you're like, I know before a race, you're not trying to lose weight. You need to fuel your body.
Mhm.
If like in a year like this year, where we have most of us are signed up for 2 races, one in June, one in October. Is there a time that it's ideal to lose weight?
Sure.
If there's some pounds you want to
3
shave?
months ago.
Exactly.
That's the honest answer. Yeah. As soon as your last season ended.
I think also like the weight is just such a personal thing. And when they tried to normalize these weight distributions for
we
people.
have to remember that those numbers are elite
this is elite.
athletes, long course athletes. Did it say or no?
Ironman distance.
Okay. So we're talking like it's the tippy top of the professional and elite field. Like I don't know that you need to use those as like, here's where I should be getting to, because none of us in here at this point are elite athletes. We're trying, but
Jackie made bronze status.
I know.
Well, Jackie might be, fit in that ratio. But I mean, when you look at these athletes, they, if you saw them, I think dressed in clothes, like the Iron Cowboy was a great example of this. I had watched his movie, his documentary and stuff. And in my head, I had pictured a much different looking individual. And then when you posted a picture next to him, I had he was tiny. Yeah. He was a small man. Now, shirtless, he's ripped. He's probably, when he was at the top of his things, he's probably, 6-7% body fat realistically. Like he looked ripped, but he's a small person.
I'm also a pretty big guy.
You are a big dude. Big
How
unit.
about if we look at though, we were just talking about the Norwegians.
Mm-hmm.
You look at those 2 guys; they are totally different.
Two different
bodies. Totally 2 different. One is tall and lean. The other one, you can tell he's not as lean. And they're both super powerful and have each one in their own right.
I think most people get Christian wrong. I don't think he's not as lean. He's got the weirdest shaped chest I've ever seen.
He's very puffy.
He's got like a barrel chest. So I think
but he's got a belly. You see him on the bike. He's kind of got a belly. He's not like.
I felt like, oh man, this is like my guy.
Yeah. They've come out in some reports and podcasts and different stuff. He found that he was, for the longer distance stuff, he would perform a little bit better, a few pounds heavier.
And that's what I mean. Like you gotta.
But I still think he'd probably fall inside these
in
numbers.
that you think.
Yeah, I do.
And I do. If I can't remember all the details, but the Ironman triathletes weren't the thinnest of the categories of triathletes. Right. They were actually on the heavier side.
Yeah, the ITU athletes and the sprint distance guys and girls are going to be much, much smaller because speed. They're going to carry a little bit more weight in the Ironman athletes. Yeah.
So 3 months ago, we should have been losing weight if we wanted to lose weight. But typically, after your race season ends, you kind of relax
a little bit.
That's kind of where I gained my weight.
If you're doing a well thought out training plan and you're really not doing too much intensity early in the base season, you can lose a lot of weight there. I mean, I don't want to say a lot of weight. You can lose weight there. As soon as the intensity starts ratcheting up, it's really hard to run at a significant deficit and still recover from your sessions so that you can do the next ones.
Be strong enough. Yeah.
So you're really actually just really hurting yourself.
Yeah. Well,
but it's interesting though. They did another study for just people to lose weight. Just tracking your weight every day, not
makes a big difference.
Changing anything, you lose weight because now whatever number you
you're
look
stressed
at,
out from looking at
your number. I know.
No, you can't change what you don't measure.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't know where you're at, you can't change it.
What's the best amount of weight to lose a week if you're going to go healthy and you're going to do it right?
So training and racing and competing aside, general rule of thumb, what I've heard is a pound a week at the most is sustainable and healthy. So the probably also depends on how big you are to start with and male, female. But anything more than that usually just means you're either at too much of a deficit, you're going to do some sort of unsustainable diet, you're not going to have enough energy levels to do the exercise that you need to do, but about a pound a week is a healthy amount, safe. That's about a pound is 3,500 calories. So you really just have to reduce 500 calories a day or burn 500 more calories a day.
I find it strange that it's best or it's recommended that you weigh even daily, because
Oh my God,
you
it
could have
just
a
fluctuates so
you could have a
much.
salty meal, or just even if you drink more one day,
If I have carbs the next day, I'm like 2 pounds heavier.
right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know why it's daily. Maybe like I'm making it up. I'm no expert. Twice a week. I don't know. Once a
Not
week. Like,
even. I
Yeah.
don't,
So here's the way I look at it. I get on a scale since I've been trying to lose weight, get on a scale every day. And I have the Garmin scale. And the nice thing about that is it plots your weight over the last, I think it's 30 days, maybe it's 45 days. You're not looking at the peaks and valleys. You're looking at the trend of that line.
Exactly.
Right. So you're right. I stepped on the scale this morning and I was like, I had a good day eating the day before. Like I shouldn't have put on any weight. And I was like 0.2 pounds heavier. Right. I don't give a shit. Right.
which is why I'm questioning the daily thing, right?
Because I want to have points that show me over time, is that line going down? If the fewer times I have those points, I think you have a chance to miss some things, or not miss some things, not be aware of things. And so I want to see them every day. I want to see, do I notice any trends? Like if I weigh myself every day, then I can correlate it to, oh, I had this for dinner. This makes me retain water. Or I had this. And you learn those things. You don't act on them. I don't say oh my gosh, I was 0.2 pounds heavier today. I need to not eat breakfast. That's not what I'm doing. But I'm just putting all that data into the machine. And
So I think if you can take that step further and say you can decouple the number you see on the scale to your next day actions.
Yes.
It's not next day actions. It's overall calorie deficit in the week actions.
right.
Yeah.
So that you lose a healthy amount or take off a healthy amount a week. Now, does it matter that, let's say it's not endurance long course training, does it matter that you're trying to change your composition? So you're trying to gain muscle. I'll just say it simply, right? So are you also keeping the same weight, but gaining muscle? So you're changing your composition at the same weight.
I guess the difficulty in this type of sport, though, is to really change your body composition, you really have to dial in your macros, like your protein, fats, and carbs. And if you want to put on more muscle, you got to up your protein. But if you want to lose weight, you have to restrict the amount of calories that you're consuming. So if more of your diet is going to be coming from protein to rebuild and recomp your body, you have to eat less fat and carbs. If you don't have those carbs, though, you may not have the fuel to make it through your workout. So if you weren't doing triathlon or a highly carb intensive sport, you just up your protein, make sure your calories are at the numbers that you need. If you're at a deficit, you're going to either maintain muscle and then lose fat. And so then your body's recomping. Muscle is heavier than fat. So you could end up being the same weight, if you continue to build muscle. But the challenge in this sport is that we need so many calories and carbs. And carbs also kind of just make you a little fluffier. I think it's tough for an average person.
Can someone talk about this idea of eating right for your blood type?
Oh, no.
Sounds like
No.
you want to.
Yeah.
There is this idea that based on a certain blood type, you are either going to react differently to whether you eat more fats, more carbs, or more protein.
Oh,
And everybody's different.
What blood type are you, Rich?
that's going to be a reel right there. That face, Marilyn, because I'm with you on that. Yeah. Put that up there. Yeah, the blood type thing's been debunked. It's garbage. And
And is there something to be said about everybody's different in terms of what they should be consuming as they are either working out or training or racing? Should be different people will consume more carbohydrates and then more proteins or more fats, and that's something like we're doing the sweat test, is there such a thing as doing like what your body absorbs better during or after a workout test?
Yeah, I think just the general rule of thumb is
Protein.
workouts protein.
Right.
You got to repair your
and
body.
carbs. Like you're
Yeah,
you're a
both.
sponge at the end of a workout, right? So whatever you put in is going to be absorbed. If you need to rebuild muscle, you need protein to do that. If you need to replace glycogen stores, you need carbs to do that. Like,
But then fats too, like good fats are really important. They're
Yeah.
anabolic, right? So
and that's why it becomes so hard to try and be at a calorie deficit when
Mhm.
you're training hard.
I think you touched on a very important point for our listeners, is that it's key to eat within a certain amount of time after your workouts, especially for the sport that we're doing. I think it went from something like eat within an hour to where now I've read or heard more like I try to do it within the first 30 minutes of the workout.
I'm terrible at that.
I do
Yeah.
it. I try and do it.
I
all
try.
the time.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, so like when I work out in the morning, I come back home, I'll walk the dog, I'll take a shower, and then I'll make a shake, and I'll have that, so it might be 45 minutes later, an hour.
It's better than not doing it.
Yeah. Well, I'm never gonna fast at that point, and not eat something, but it might be a little while. And I mean, you do the best you can,
Mm-hmm.
So I think weight's a tough one. And I think endurance sports have a long history of eating disorders. I think that if you go back and look at and talk to like pro cyclists, probably even pro triathletes, like eating disorders are a real thing. And guys don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. Women are, I think, more likely to speak about it than men are. But there are some serious eating disorders in the endurance community. And I think it's something people have to be aware of. Because like you bring up these numbers, like people strive to look like Lionel Sanders or strive to look like Jan Frodeno. And like, in addition to putting in 35 hours a week of training, they have genetics to back that kind of stuff up. They are a certain body type. And me as a high school biology teacher who gets to train 10 or 12 hours a week, like I probably could never look like that. And if I try, I might go down that rabbit hole of some kind of eating disorder. So hopefully people are aware of that kind of stuff and don't put themselves in those kind of difficult situations. And if they do, they find the right person to ask for help with.
We know somebody too.
We do.
Mm-hmm.
Teammate.
Yep.
So if you need help, message us. We'll get you in touch.
Anything else with as far as weight goes?
I do like the adage of you can't outrun a bad diet.
Yeah.
And it was primarily true. So before I was into endurance, I was heavily into CrossFit. And I was probably like still my heaviest because I would just eat a lot. It's just you do more exercise, you eat a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of just maintaining a certain weight, but I was close to 200 pounds back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, I really need to like at least look like I work out, because I'd work out like 6 days a week, train every day. So it wasn't until I actually went on a caloric deficit, followed a meal plan. I did the Zone diet back then. Worked really well for me, dropped to like 25 pounds, and then kind of been able to maintain that without having to do following anything strictly. But I found that with triathlon, once you get to half Ironman training, you sort of can eat whatever you want. But then the problem is, like, then you sort of, if I stop doing half Ironman training,
Right.
I can't, it's hard
eating
to,
the same way.
I still eat the same way.
Yeah.
So then the only way now is like to then start doing like Ironman training.
Well, you're on the right plan.
So
I think-
Ironman and marathon.
When you're younger, you can outrun your
Yeah.
Mhm.
outrun your diet a little bit, but as you get older, I think the more weight is on your diet.
Yep.
And I think I've talked about that before. Like, I don't think you should try and restrict your calorie. I don't think you should try and lose weight while you're exercising. I think it's important to fuel the work that you're doing, and, don't try and outwork your diet and decrease the calories there, decrease them during your normal day's eating. Fuel your work, recover from that work, and then find another place to cut your calories. I think that's an important lesson that I've at least learned. So, all right, we got one thing on the list left.
What did we miss?
HRV.
Oh.
And this is a fun one.
Yeah, it's really fun.
So do you guys have any idea about HRV?
I've learned a lot about it in the last year, and I love it.
Love it.
Really?
I love it.
I love it.
Yeah.
So HRV stands for heart rate variability. So when we think of our pulse, how our heart beats, we think of it like a metronome. If your heart's beating at 60 beats a minute, I'm just going to use simple numbers, right? 60 beats a minute, we have this idea that it beats every second on the second, which is not necessarily true. There's minor differences in that beat to beat. There's minor beat to beat differences in time. And what researchers have found is that the more variability there is in beat to beat time, the higher the heart rate variability is. It kind of means like you're ready for whatever you're about to throw at yourself.
Your heart is ready to react to whatever you're going to throw at it.
It is reacting to those minor differences that are happening physiologically just in your normal going about your life. Your heart is able to respond to those minor differences. If you put yourself in a stressful situation, that goes away. And you switch to, I'm going to get this wrong, your sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight response. And it's like, okay, we got to worry about all these other things going on around us. So forget about heart rate, just do like a metronome. Mm-hmm. And so the difference between that low variability and the high variability gives you a pretty good idea of where your stress level's at. And the cool stuff that's come out of this research in the last 5-10 years or so is that it's probably the best way we have to measure total stress. And it takes everything into account. Your body knows stress. The stress response is the same, whether you're getting chased by a lion 200,000 years ago, or you're trying to do some VO2 max efforts, or your boss at work is yelling down your throat to get this report done, or you're not sleeping. The stress response is the same. And you react with this HRV response over time, and you can get a pretty good idea of kind of where you're at and how ready are you for a challenge by looking at your HRV. And there's a bunch of different ways you can measure it nowadays. I'm sure the Whoop strap, you see tons of people wearing that thing. The Oura Ring is another one that these wearables that are accurate enough to measure the difference between heartbeats. And then the Whoop and the Oura apply their own algorithms and come up with what usually they call like a readiness score or something like that. There's apps on your phone that literally use your phone camera to measure on your fingertip what that beat-to-beat variability is, what that HRV is. And there's a lot of research that's pointing towards like this is a really good way to measure kind of like how ready are you for the day ahead. And because it takes everything into account, it might be more valuable for everyday athletes like us who have a job and families and stuff like that. And our stress level is pretty high in addition to your training load. Where like if you're a pro, and I don't want to like these pros work hard, right? But if that's all you have to worry about, it's a very different story than what we deal with from, when we wake up at 5 a.m. until we go to bed. So, but heart rate variability kind of pulls it all together into this one little tidy nugget of data that you can track over time. And that's probably where the real value is, tracking it over time. That's the thing I don't like about the Whoop and the Oura Ring is they give you this score in the morning that's like, okay, you are this recovered. And it's like, shoot, what do I do with that now? Like, do I change my training entirely? Do I text my coach and be like, hey, my readiness score was only 46 today. What should I do? Like, it's like, where's the trends, going
So what's
with
the
that?
one that Garmin gives you?
It started to do HRV also.
So Garmin has, I guess, their body battery.
They have HRV.
Oh, it depends on which watch you have. Mine doesn't have that.
Oh, mine has it, but it takes it at night,
right?
Which I've heard is not the best time.
Okay,
so you could do a 4-week average.
Yeah, no, it does it. If you wear it long enough, it averages everything out. But.
So the Whoop and the Oura Ring are taking nighttime measurements also. They're recording this stuff during those stages of sleep, and it's like what's your sleep look like and stuff like that. My watch. So you guys are both on the Phoenix.
Yeah.
Okay. I have the Forerunner 945. It doesn't do HRV.
Team 945.
Team 945. All right.
So it just tells you like you're balanced. and then it gives you a number, but I don't know what it means, the
Right.
number.
Well, there's green, orange.
Yeah,
and-
green is balanced.
Yeah.
Is it like a higher number better, lower number
Yeah.
worse?
So you're
Yeah.
you're basically, you should be in the green, and that means you're pretty good compared to your average, and that's a good score.
There's no number. You don't compare the number to somebody else.
Right. The numbers
It's
are
your
unique
number.
to you.
Which
but
is
your
great.
relative number.
Which
Right.
is
Yeah.
great.
So, but
Um,
sometimes I get unbalanced, and I'm like, oh no, what does
Yeah.
that
So
mean?
that's
Right.
So what people are using it for is, at the extreme, they're saying, okay, my HRV is low or not a good score, so my body is not going to adapt to the training that I'm going to give it today.
Right.
So
It's just
if
not gonna,
you're
I'm not
unbalanced-
going to train today, right?
Oh, well, that's not.
Or what I think may be like what I've used, like some people will say before the HRV number, you're doing this workout, but for some reason my heart rate's not going up as
Mhm.
much as I thought it would be. And that's related to your HRV. That means you're not recovered enough and you're stressed out more. And so your heart isn't able to react to the stress you're putting it under.
Mm.
So a better way to use that number, or I think a better way to use that number, is if your HRV is lower on that app that you're on the Garmin that you're using, is if you had a really hard workout and it's unbalanced planned, you may want to adjust your workout
Right.
so that
Make
you're
it
not
easier.
putting it under
More
as much stress, because your heart's not going to be able, or your body isn't going to be able to react to that training
Got
load
it.
that you're
Okay.
putting it under.
Right. Another way to think of, and I think that was a great way of explaining it. I think you could also use it, not proactively, but like retroactively. You look and you say, okay, I went and did this workout yesterday,
Mhm.
and now
then I
that
came
heart HRV
unbalanced.
dropped so low, I wasn't ready for that workout yet.
Okay.
Think about, like, we could all go out and ride 120 miles tomorrow, right? We'd lots
Sure.
of chamois cream.
It's cold
Yeah.
and rainy.
We'd destroy ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Realistically, what kind of benefit are you getting from that?
Nothing.
Nothing, right? And your HRV would probably show that very clearly. It would drop, and it might take 4, 5, 6 days to recover back to your
Mhm.
baseline. Where if we went out with a pro cyclist and did that same 120-mile ride with them, they're ready to go do 140 miles tomorrow, like the next
Mhm.
day. So their HRV would barely dip because they're accustomed to that workload. So you can use it to kind of zone in on that. Where I think the danger comes with it is, like so many people do, they hone in on one thing and use that to guide everything. And they say, like, okay, my HRV today is low. It needs to be an off day, and when maybe not. Maybe yesterday just need to be easier. Maybe you just need to like dial things down a little bit. Like, you're looking, like, I like that long-term trend. What is
Mhm.
it, like 4 week you can look
Yeah,
at?
you can look at four.
I
four
think
or
that's
seven.
whatever it is. But like, I
Mhm.
think that's the important thing. And if you see like, oh, for the last week, my numbers have been slowly dropping down. Okay, well, now your training stress might be a little too high. So dial things back.
Mhm.
I think, like, in a perfect world, if you had enough of that HRV data, like historically, I think you could get rid of the whole idea of like 3 weeks on, a week off. I think that's a very general sort of, well, that's the way they've done it, so let's keep doing
Right,
that.
because you can see.
You
But
can
it's going
see
to be
this.
different for
For
every person,
everybody,
because
right.
you might be stressed more at work at a particular week.
Exactly.
And then so your HRVs, you're going to see it start to take a
Mhm.
dive, and you're going to be like, okay, I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
And that's the
Mhm.
retroactive.
So,
But I have used it to say, okay, it's taking a dive, and I have this workout plan. How can I modify it?
Mhm.
and there's
Take the stress off.
So if you don't have a watch that does it, so like our watch, James, will do it, but you have to put on a chest strap,
Yeah.
and it has to be like a pretty good one. It has to be one of the, like a Polar,
The one you have will do it.
the one you
Garmin
have
one, yeah.
probably, or the Polar H10 will do it. The app for your phone is like maybe $5 or $6. It's called HRV for Training. The guy who built it is out there on Twitter putting out tons of content and stuff and information about it. And it's super easy to use. You wake up in the morning, you hold your finger over your camera for a minute, and it takes its reading. You can answer a couple of questions like, what was your training like? It'll pull stuff from Training Peaks also. So
Oh, wow.
it'll know what your training was like. And it'll say, like, did you have any drinks? Were you injured? Like, all that stuff. And it starts building this database. And it builds eventually, like you have in the Garmin, this baseline
Right. It
of
takes
where
a
your
while to
number, it
build.
does take a while.
Mhm.
And that's like, it's one of those things, like if I'm working with an athlete for like long term, like months to year kind of time frame, then HRV is something I'm going to want to see from them. If you come to me and you're like, I got 8 weeks until my race.
James.
There's not enough time to get good data, meaningful data that we can do
Yeah.
anything with.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those unique things that if you paid a lot of attention to it, you can get really dialed into how you, and it goes back to what we've talked about this a bunch, getting a feel for things, right? Like you wake up sometimes and you're like, oh, I feel like garbage.
Mhm.
Well, this will confirm that. Or maybe it'll say like, yeah, you feel a little bit tired, but you're fine. Like you
Yeah.
actually are okay and ready to go. And we've all had those workouts, right? You wake up and you're like I've dragged myself here for a bike ride. I don't know how many times. And then I get on the bike and I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm fine.
Mhm.
That first hill, blow out some cobwebs and then let's go.
Yeah.
That happens to me on the track. I think every week it's like I see the work. I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
kind of mail it in today, and then I start doing it, and then I'll
Right.
have like the best workout I've
Yeah.
had.
And I
Mhm.
don't think you need the confirmation from the HRV to be like, yes, I am ready to go. Like, I think it's more of the trend kind of thing. And I think it helps you dial in that training so that you're doing the appropriate amount of training. I think too many people try and overstretch and say, like, I've got 6 weeks to get in Ironman shape, and they dig themselves a hole and then they can't dig out of. This allows you to figure out that appropriate amount of training for you. But it's one of the, it's an extra thing to measure, an extra thing to think about. But I think there's a ton of value in HRV data. So
Yeah.
So it sounds like we went through all this data, and there's no one metric you can use
nope.
to get that complete picture. And at the same time, too, you have to understand the context of this data.
Right.
Nothing's absolute. So really, I mean, I don't know what we may have solved or not. It's like you
I don't
need
think
all this
we've-
data.
Right. I don't
and-
think we've solved anything because data by itself in a vacuum doesn't help you do anything. You ultimately you want enough information to make smart, actionable changes.
Yeah.
And what you need personally for that is going to be different for every person.
Hopefully, we've given our listeners a good concept of what is out there and how to pay attention to it in
Mhm.
order to improve their training and fitness.
And at the very least, just understand what's on your homepage of your Garmin Connect screen.
Right.
Yeah.
To make better decisions, because ultimately we're all short on time. So you want to make the best use of it.
Yeah.
And this will help you do that.
Okay. That was a good one. Anybody got anything else to add? Any things we didn't talk about that should be talked about? We're about almost at an hour and a half.
There might be. I just can't think of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything that I kind of go down rabbit holes a lot and try and find out as much as I can about that's my guilty pleasure. But I don't really. I think we kind of hit on the most important big ones. Yeah. All right. So I think we're good.
It's a
Yeah.
wrap.
That's
Mhm.
a wrap. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to another long one. This is James's favorite thing to listen to on his long rides and long
Yes.
runs. If you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and give us a like. Some 5-star reviews would be helpful. That really helps kind of with the algorithm, gets our podcast out there to more people so that they can share with the same information that you found helpful. You can leave a comment. If there's anything you'd like to see on the show, send us an email. We've got a list of things we want to go through, but we're always open to some new suggestions. And again, we just really thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. Bye, guys.